What's the most unfair thing you've ever seen? Growing up I had a friend whose family was the worst. I went over there for play dates a lot. One day a Korean girl who I sort of befriended and helped her with her homework, she was younger than me, followed me to my friend's house. When we saw her come up to the house, the mom shooed her away. She said, "I don't want Chinese people in my house." The girl went home crying her eyes out. I felt terrible for not following and comforting her, but I was 10 years old and didn't know what to do. The worst part is that the mother who insulted the girl blamed me for the incident because she was trying to save face. The Korean family told me they didn't need me to help with her homework anymore. I'm not sure if the girl was too shy or scared to tell the truth, but I never spoke to either of the families again. Someone fired over giving a $1 coupon to someone whose $1 coupon wasn't working. 10 days ago my stepdad died on the same day my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I wish I could do more for my little sister. In Bakersfield, California I watched a man get stabbed and bleed out next to a gas station. There was a news crew there before the police or EMT team. I was once at a fundraiser, where the winning prize was tickets to go see Pearl Jam in concert. At the end of the night, they call my name as the winner. Woo! Except when I get to the front of the room to collect my tickets, I get looks of confusion and the runaround until the event was over. Turns out, some scumbag son of a bitch told the organizers he was me, and they gave him the friggin' tickets. By the time they verified that I was me, he was long gone, and I was out of luck. Best they could do was an apology and a $50 gift card to TGI Fridays. They didn't ask for ID? Nuts. When I was in grade school we had a final group assignment to design a community center, with my teacher promising a lobster dinner for the group that had the highest mark. I had a bit of a crush on my teacher and thought, hey, lobster dinner. My group busted their asses designing the hijinks after-school community center, calling a long list of businesses to determine membership fees, cost of construction. We got hung up on a lot looking for price of building materials, community outreach programs and a whole lot more. We even helped the special needs kid in our group write a jingle, and we got the highest mark. When it came time for our lobster dinner, my group stayed in the classroom during recess to enjoy the fruits of our labor. My teacher brings out our lobster, which was a loaf of bread with googly eyes and paper lobster claws stuck in the side. It was on that day I learned the true meaning of disappointment. My girlfriend was the happiest, kindest person ever. We had just finished our first year of university and things were great. Then she was diagnosed with an incurable brain tumor in the summer. She passed away a year later. The most unfair part is that her sister had died from the same type of cancer as a child. Her family are some of the best people I've ever met. Heartbreaking. My mom bought my brother a Sega from a garage sale years after it was a popular gaming system. It didn't change the love my brother had for it. My brother and I routinely took care of ourselves after school as parents were working. One day my dad came home early and was irate that my brother wasn't home. He then proceeded to make me throw his Sega in the dumpster of our complex, and told me if I brought back in, I would be hit with a belt. This was his idea of a punishment towards my brother. In my 8-year-old brain, I obviously don't want to get hit and did as I was told. The look on my brother's face when he came home and my dad told him what happened to his Sega was just heartbreaking. It still makes me sad when I think about it. Edit. Thank you for the suggestions of buying my brother a new Sega. This is certainly going to be his Christmas gift. Also thank you for sharing some of your similar stories. It's unreal how we remember these instances vividly and how they still impact us. Also, my dad is still a cruel person and my stories of his behavior are endless. Leslie, thank you for the kind words, I appreciate it so much. Smile. I was in intermediate school and we were out at a camp. Now I was the only scout among the 60-odd kid, so I was given the harder tasks to keep myself entertained. On the first night we were carrying these heavy wooden benches around, and my partner dropped his end of the bench. Due to the sudden drop, the bench slammed into my foot, almost completely crushing it. It swelled up to nearly twice the size, broke at least 3 toes, and the whole thing went purple. Despite me clearly being in tremendous pain, I was told to suck it up because I was a scout and should be able to handle it. I was told to shove my half-broken foot into my already too small tramping boots and keep up with everyone else for the next several days. Some kid fell down a 2-meter hill, think like 50-degree angle, on the last day, and got called an ambulance. This was 6 years ago and I am still fuming. I took care of a woman who had cancer and was in her end days. She was young, late 30s, and had 3 sons, ages 9, 11 and 18. Apparently she had only just been diagnosed earlier that year. Earlier in the year, when her husband got the news that she had cancer, he was on his way home to comfort her and was killed in a car accident. So these boys lost both their parents in the span of about 10 months. This woman not only found out she was dying, but then was loaded with the grief of his death and the uncertainty of her children's futures. All of us nurses had to rotate care of her, as no one could leave that room and not be in tears. We didn't want to add to the boys' grief. Life is ducked sometimes. Zero tolerance policies for fighting. I can get jumped, do nothing, and still get suspended? Okay, way to victim shame. All that teaches is that the victim should just go for it and kick the other person's ass, or at least try to fight back. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Might as well do. I'm a foster parent. All of our foster kids have had terrible stories. Some have had happy endings, new families, old families that got their act together. Some have not had happy endings. Trying to help these kids is the hardest thing I've ever done. Unfair, to me, is knowing that last night 6 kids, ages 2 through 12, slept on cots in a CPS office near here because their parents couldn't keep clean and there's not enough foster families to handle the load. Tonight they'll probably be in an institution until a placement opens up. Because their parents are duck-ups. I can't think of anything more unfair than a toddler sleeping on a cot in a strange office building because their parents shouldn't be parents. My psycho mom called the police on my brother and said he was hitting her. My brother was only refusing to give her money to support her gambling addiction and grabbed her wrist when he saw her grab a knife to keep her from slashing at him. My brother would never hit a woman. Neither one of us talk to her anymore. She's blown up our phones with guilt trips and lies and saying it's our fault her life sucks and telling us she owns us as our mother. I left for the Navy when I got kicked out of the house at 17 to get away from home. My brother had to continue dealing with her for several years because he couldn't join the military due to medical issues. Our grandma, her mom, passed away and our uncle is in the hospital. But we don't talk to that side of the family now because most of them have been ignorant to the toxicity and grip that our mother has had on us. Which sucks because they are really good people. One of my friends got cancer as a teenager, fought it for years and beat it and had good health for 20 years. In her late 30s she got pregnant with her then husband. She ended up getting divorced during the pregnancy because he was an alcoholic and couldn't or wouldn't stop drinking, in spite of being diabetic and losing one of his feet due to the combination. So she has the baby and she tries to breastfeed but she can't produce any milk, so she goes to the doctor, and it turns out she can't produce milk because she has breast cancer. She puts up an incredible fight, has a double mastectomy and chemo and radiation while being a single mother to a newborn, and she beats cancer a second time. 5 years go by and things are going well, until she starts feeling really tired all the time, goes to the doctor, she has cancer again, but this time it's in her spine and it's terminal. She's been dating this guy who luckily turned out to be an incredible dude because he sticks with her through the whole thing, and she fights it hard because her daughter is only 5 years old and she doesn't want her to grow up without a mother. She died earlier this summer. The dad is pretty much out of the picture. The guy who stuck with her through terminal cancer and the daughter are extremely close but he has no legal rights. I really don't know what's happening with the kid, but she basically just lost the 2 people she thought of as parents. Probably the best case scenario is that he'll end up with her grandmother and still be able to see the guy sometimes. My friend was one of the most wonderful and badass people I've ever known and she went through hell 3 times and then died. The whole thing is just so tragic and unfair. Edit. Because I've got the question, why didn't she just marry him? Like 30 times, I'm going to answer it here. Marrying someone with kids does not automatically grant you parental rights to those children, especially if the other parent is still living and still has their parental rights. It can be done, but it is not a simple or quick process. When I was 15, we had our year 10 formal, which is kind of like Australia's homecoming dance/prom, I guess. I wasn't very excited for it, but I was excited for the after party, which was going to be my first high school party. I lived 35 km from my school and had to take a bus into town every day, and both my parents worked a lot, so I missed a lot of parties. I talked about going to the after party for weeks, but my mother decided to tell me that I couldn't go on the way to the formal because I hadn't organized anything when she knew full well that I had. I was staying at my friend's house that night and she had the address on the invitation. Also, she told me that on the way, so I'd have no chance of organizing anything anyway. Pissed me off as I had to spend the whole night at something I didn't care about and listen to everyone talk about a party I couldn't go to. This experience taught me to always live up to the promises I make with my kids when I have them. My stepbrother was at home with his girlfriend and his neighbors were having a party next door. I think it was for St. Patrick's Day and during a weekday. My stepbrother went over to ask his neighbor if they could keep it down because he had work early in the morning. Well, apparently that set off his neighbor. My stepbrother went back into his house. A few minutes later, his neighbor came to his door, lures him outside where his buddies ambushed my stepbrother. They beat the shit out of him. My stepbrother's roommate came home to him being beat in the front yard. At this point my stepbrother was out cold and his roommate jumped in and covered my stepbrother's head with his body. They beat him too. 911 was called. First on the scene was the police. My stepbrother came too, barely, and the cops had the roommate in cuffs because he wanted an ambulance fast and refused to expedite an ambulance. My stepbrother was on the brink of death. Had to have reconstructive surgery to fix his face and jaw. Went to court and the neighbor's dad was a somebody and his son ended up with community service for attempted murder. They didn't even have to pay for medical expenses. 14th birthday, grandparents get me my first iPod/first MP3 player. My older brother throws a shit fit because he didn't get anything too, of course, because it wasn't his birthday. He threw a fit in Best Buy until they bought him a Nintendo DS. So he got a present too for no reason. The next weekend, he comes home from being with my grandparents again with an iPod of his own. So he got 2 presents because he threw a tantrum and guilted them into it. He was 17 at the time. I brushed it off and just laughed at him to myself for being such a child. He's a piece of shit and is only slightly more mature at 30 years than he was back then. When we were about 12 and 10 my brother was very irresponsible with his things. He had his new bike stolen after leaving on the front lawn of the house, unlocked, because he was too lazy to bring it into the garage. Fine, his fault, his loss. So, he starts borrowing my bike all of the time and does the exact same thing and it gets stolen within a matter of weeks. My parents refused to get me a new bike, or give him any shit over losing mine and I never got another bike until I was an adult who could afford to buy themselves one. Also, since his birthday was in the summer he got a brand new bike, brand new everything, and mine is 2 weeks after Christmas. You can guess I got the used bike, used everything. My friend and I wrote the exact same thing on a test. He got it marked right and mine was marked wrong. I got accused of cheating on a test because the kid sitting next to me and I had the same grade. We had different answers wrong and the teacher made me retake the test. A man I knew was fighting in court for 2 years for a murder case of his ex-girlfriend. The description of the killer looked nothing like him. There was video that they would not pull for court. The girlfriend's daughter said it wasn't him. His lawyer in court was a public defender who said in court to the judge he wouldn't want them as his lawyer because he was black. The court would not change his public defender even after this. The courts kept pushing back his dates months at a time. Right to a speedy trial. I was in my buddy's car when he got pulled over for speeding. When I saw the cop as we drove past him, I instinctively tugged on my seatbelt to confirm it was on. When the cop wrote my buddy his ticket, he gave me one for not wearing my seatbelt. He apparently thought my tug on the belt was me putting it on. I explained everything and he didn't believe me. I went to court over it and the judge compromised by cutting the fine in half. I didn't do anything wrong and still had to pay a fine. Last year my best friend was killed by a cop who had lost sight of a suspect he was chasing. The cop hit him going through an intersection going 90 miles per hour. My friend was the best guy you could meet. Honest. Just very kind-hearted. I saw the car later. There was about 6 inches of space between the passenger door and the driver's. In college I moved in with my girlfriend who is now my wife. My parents were so upset I was cut off from all insurance and lectured on how horrible a thing I had done. When my sister moved in with her boyfriend my dad went and painted their bedroom so it would look nice. They probably realized, based on the little info you gave us, that they ducked up with you, and they didn't want to make the same mistake with your sister. Still doesn't make it fair, though. A girl who lived down the street from me growing up died in a car crash. She was really young. Hadn't even finished college yet. 2 or 3 years later her younger sister, who my sister and I used to play with together, died the exact same way. The only one left is the middle child, their brother. I can tell it has absolutely crushed their family and I just remember going to the funeral and thinking why? Why did they have to live through this not once but twice? That much heartache has to be unbelievable and it's incredibly unfair. The brother was always a little prick growing up but man, I wish I could pull him aside now and tell him just how sorry I am that he has to live without his sisters and that if he needs anything, not to hesitate to ask. But I really never knew him well, so he'd probably think that was weird. But I think of him and his family often. Update: I know a bunch of people were saying I should reach out. Looked him up on social media. Looks like he's actually doing really well, looks very happy, has a girl now and a good support system. So I feel a bit better. Mostly just wanted to know he was okay. When I was a teen in Spanish class, I did a project with some other students and we made an instructional video, all in Spanish. The other students already spoke Spanish fluently and I didn't. We all were in the video, but I ended up planning, writing, editing and filming the thing as well. I got a B on the project because my accent and pronunciation wasn't as good as the others who got A's. The teacher knew I did most of the work. Edit: I guess I thought this was unfair at the time because part of the grade involved how much each person participated in the making of the thing. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.